You're listening to episode 45, Candyman, directed by Bernard Rose. Is it the best horror film in the 90s? Let's find out on this episode of Video Vila Podcast. So for episode 45, we are, I guess, ringing in the Halloween season a wee bit early because Logan picked a traditional horror film.
Well, yeah. I mean, I picked one from the 90s. One of my personal favorites from that era. I thought there was a lot of cool things to say about it, so I wanted to do an episode on it. So I got to torture you with watching it.
Yeah, and just, against my wishes and against our knowing, we have really just taken on the horror genre.
No, well, I mean,
for the most part, yes. The people that we share common grounds with are mostly horror people, which is fine. They're great people, all in all. But I don't like horror films for the most part.
But the thing is, I will say, though, Candyman is not it is a horror film. It's definitely got, I don't know. When I think of horror films, when I think of Candyman, I think of something that's very well done, something that also is not just a horror film, that's just overall a good movie, a movie that has kind of definitely has a message, and it's very artistically done. So for some reason, yes, it is a horror film, but I look at it as like a Silence of the Lambs. Like it's on a different level than most horror films, especially from the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, I like horror films, but a very select few.
Well, I know you like your Scream and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I have my niche group.
Yeah, and you've been liking the Fridays, which is cool. I like that. This is definitely, it's a little bit different. Like in the 90s, people want to put this in a box and call Candyman a slasher. I wouldn't really consider it a slasher personally. Well, it just doesn't really have the same slasher tropes that every other slasher would have. So that's why I kind of look at it in a different light. I mean, some people can argue with me. I do know they wanted to capitalize on the character because it did so well. So they wanted to make him like a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael, but Candyman, that's not Candyman. And I think we really, truly understood that after we got the sequels, because you're like, don't get me wrong, the sequels have their place. The second one definitely kind of changes the history of Candyman. It continues on the path, but it moves things around to make it take place so you in a different area, and also so you can attach another story to it. It's not awful. It's nearly not as good as the first one. And then the third one was direct to video, which it's okay. But like I said, they were trying to turn Candyman into a major character to try to profit off of a franchise. And I personally just think Candyman was just more of like a one and done kind of film. Mm-hmm. What do you like after you've seen it? Like, do you feel like the story's over?
For a second.
Yeah, but like the story's over, you know what I mean? Like the story was told and I think it's done, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like everybody tries to do a sequel for almost like everything. Nobody can just like leave shit alone.
That is true. And especially with us getting a lot of legacy sequels and stuff like that. We did get a direct sequel per se from the first one, which I believe was the 2018 one or whatever. I think that's when it came out. I liked the new one. They did some cool things, but there's also a lot of stuff about the new one I didn't like. And I think, to be honest, to go in a big conversation about that would need to be its own show. But per se, like, if you're wondering about the new one, they did some things and they got some things right 100%. They kind of try to stick with the Candyman lore and actually made a actual sequel that made sense. But some of the artistic choices that they made, as far as that individual story, I didn't really like. I like building on the lore, but some of the it was like kind of like two roads you could take, and they took a road that I just didn't really care for. I feel like that movie could have been a lot better. Don't get me wrong, it was very well done. Just for me and what I like to see, I feel like it could have been handled in a different way. But maybe if we're still doing this in 10 years, maybe we'll circle back around and we'll talk about that one. But I mean, this one, we got Candyman, which is derived from Clive Barker's original story, The Forbidden, which was in his Books of Blood series. I got a chance to read that before I was watching the movie. And it's very cool to see how this movie played out versus what we got in that short story. I mean, a lot of the short story and the meat is here, but you can definitely see where they took the story and then they added upon the story to tell their own story. Because Bernard Rhodes went in and basically rewrote, but he wrote a whole new story but also keeping the emphasis of the original short story.
Yeah.
Which I think if there's any way to do it, this is a way to do it. He did a phenomenal job with this. And this movie, like you were saying, it's a little close to October and stuff like that. This movie, I'm telling you, it feels like October. It feels like a Halloween movie. I don't know if you got that vibes. You didn't get it at all? No?
Nope, not at all.
I guess it's like, I don't know, it's just the way of like it's kind of cold outside. Everyone's kind of like dressed down. I mean, not dressed down, but like, it just has a vibe. And just I think a lot of it comes from also Philip Glass's score. Just the music in this movie, the music in this movie alone already takes this horror film and just like it puts it on 3 new levels, because this is something completely different. Okay. This is not like, I don't know, like this is not, I Know What You Did Last Summer. This is not a Scream. This came before those, but it's just something that I really think is, I think it is a real piece of art. A real piece of art, because it was just, I don't know, even to the blood, the way they use the blood, the fact that the movie doesn't have actually a lot of gore. You don't see actual gore, but just people are coated in blood, and the way of how it, it's laying on their clothes, and how they're like, Helen's clothes when she gets to the jail is just completely stained and it's starting to turn brown. Just certain details in this film, really, I think it just raises the bar for what films should follow after this. Because we were in a dry spell for horror, really. I mean, you were getting your Fridays and you were getting your Freddys and your Michaels, but Scream hadn't came out yet. Slasher phrase was dying. I know people want to put this in the slasher universe, and I don't really think it's there, but if you believe it is, more power to you, but it's not a traditional slasher in my opinion. I don't know, like have you ever seen any other adaptations of Clive Barker's? Have you seen Hellraiser yet?
No.
You haven't seen Hellraiser? Okay. Well, that was one thing that I definitely noticed. So after me reading Stephen King and stuff, starting to get into the Clive Barker universe and actually start to go upon his books, and he is definitely a different beast.
Yeah, so far I prefer the Stephen King universe.
Which you don't even like that one that much.
I like ones out of it.
Yeah.
Specific ones, but not all of his stuff.
Yeah, the way Clive Barker writes is completely different. Like the way I like when I read a Stephen King book or listen to a Stephen King book or whatever, because I do both now. I've upgraded to reading. But I always feel like he's almost kind of like the everyman horror writer, where his dialogue really can appeal to any person of any type of, I guess, reading experience. And I think that's the reason why his books take off so fast and are so easy to get into, because his dialogue is I would call it normal speech. Now, with Clive Barker coming from the UK, I mean, he is...
Yeah, people in different countries definitely write literature in different ways.
I would say this is literature. Like, if you want to, if you want to, like, I know that sounds stupid, but when I think of literature...
there is a huge difference.
Yeah, this is, his stuff is literature.
Yeah, there's casual reads, and then there's more intellectual reads.
Oh, yeah.
With, deeper vocabulary, not deeper, extensive vocabulary and things. So it definitely changes the cadence that you might read and understand something at.
100%. And I mean, that's what I've noticed with going through reading his stories now. It is what you're 100% right about that. Like, you hit it on the head. I mean, the nail on the head. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth.
It's like I read the book. I didn't.
But yeah, I mean, like, so I mean, Clive Barker at this time, he had a couple of adaptations that had already been turned into film. Hellraiser, which being derived from one of his stories, was already in film at this point. Before this movie came out, while he was actually working on Nightbreed, which was another movie derived from one of his short stories, that's when he actually met the director, Bernard Rose, and they had lunch together because they were on the same lot while he's finishing up that film. And he hadn't known of any of his actual work at that point in time. He hadn't read anything, but he knew who he was. And he said, based off of how nice of a lunch they had, just meeting him, he went off and started reading the Books of Blood series. And that's where he came upon The Forbidden. And he reached back out to Clive and was like, listen here, I really think there's something great in this story. And I want to do it. And they got the agreement, and he signed off the rights, and let Bernard Rose do his thing. He was, I believe, an executive producer on the film, but he let Bernard Rose do his thing. Like, he let him take his story and run with it. And I think his adaptation of the film versus the storyline is phenomenal. And like I said, what he added, I think, is incredible. The fact that it flows so well, you would think it was the original storyline. How he was able to blend a new story within the story, I think it was fantastic and very well done. And like with the series of books, and with Clive Barker being him being from a completely different country, and then having another director come in from another country working on subject matter that has a lot to do with race and poverty and the inner city, and it not being from the perspective of an American, I think the way they were able to capture it was very well done. And the way they spun the story and told it from outside eyes, not being a native, I think definitely capitalizes on maybe how other people outside of us may view something that aren't around it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that telling of the story, to be honest, I don't think it would have been as good as if probably an American director had directed it, because they were able to look through,
like unbiased lens.
Exactly. And I think it was very well done, because, Clive Barker, he wrote this story based off of Liverpool, where he grew up, which was at the, was very rough area. And to put this into the U.S. and put it in Chicago, which Chicago has been very known, especially during that time, for being a very rough city, and Cabrini Green being one of the worst high crime cities, around at the time. I mean, the south side of Chicago was very rough as well. So to kind of show you something that's on your back door that maybe not people might have been paying attention to, you know what I mean? I think it was very. I just really like seeing that. Yeah. Now, when it comes back to talking about Cabrini Green, is they actually shot in the real area. That was not a stage. They actually shot real time in the projects. The people that we see when Helen and Burnett first show up, those are actual real gang members that they put in the film. And in order to actually film the movie, they actually had to pay off the gang as well. So this was this was a real big deal for them to actually go into the hood and film this movie that, a lot of people probably didn't want them being there. You know what I mean? And, I know a lot of people that were making the film, they talked about that, it was stressful for that whole time. There was extra security around. There were snipers on the roof. I mean, it was a really big deal for them to actually go in the heart of the beast and film this movie that's actually talking about how bad it is there. Mm-hmm. And I just don't feel like we really see that too much these days. And for the time when it was done, I mean, I think it's incredible what they were able to achieve from that. There was even words where the last day of shooting that there was actually a gunshot and they had shot one of the camera trucks. And the bullet had went through the camera truck and embedded inside the camera truck. Luckily, no one got hurt. But I mean, it was a real crime area. I mean, there was the stuff in the story is no joke. It is 100% real. And that's the thing is you could make this a fictitious place, but that would definitely took it away from the storyline.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
For them to actually put it in, in the battle zone, it's crazy that they were able to do that. Like I said, I highly doubt that would ever happen in today's standards.
Cops go in it all the time. Like the show Cops.
Oh, I mean, I guess if you wanted maybe a Vice documentary or something like that.
Like, what you talking about? They did that shit all the time.
There was that. Oh, I forgot what the documentary channel. I mean, not documentary. The fake documentary show was, but they made they were making fun of Vice, and where it was they were going in it was making fun of reporters constantly getting on these assignments, and they were going into a place they weren't supposed to be, and then 2 minutes later. All right, well, that poor reporter died, so we had to call in some new reporters.
Yeah. But you also do have, journalists that go to, not necessarily third world countries, but go to, report on certain things, whether it's, a war that we're in and stuff like that, and end up being, held captive.
Oh, yeah,
and
100%.
Things like that. It's incredibly unfortunate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
scary.
That's different than making a Hollywood movie.
Well, no, I know that. I'm just saying there are real-life scenarios where that goes south.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And it is funny because this movie is very serious. I mean, this is a very serious movie. And it's crazy to think that the studio, not the director, but the studio had their eyes on Eddie Murphy to be Candyman.
I probably would have liked it more.
Well, I mean, but it would have been a completely different movie.
It would have, exactly.
Completely different movie. And, I just...
My point.
And it's just, I think Tony Todd did a wonderful job. I mean, he is Candyman.
Oh, yeah. He definitely has a very, ominous feel to him. And, it was, and a very, powerful feel to him.
But also, he's elegant.
Yeah.
He's a very beautiful man.
It's crazy that he, it's truly calm but terrifying.
Exactly. And I don't think anyone else could have done it like him.
Yeah.
And that's there's scenes, and I will talk a little bit more in detail when we get to it, but there's scenes when he is talking to Helen and he's just talking to her, and you can see he is not, like you said, he's not intentionally being threatening.
Yeah.
But he is threatening,
yeah.
But he's also to the point where he's very elegant when he's almost confessing his love to her, and in the midst of he's so infatuated with her and he wants her so badly to the point the thought to have her brings tears to his eyes, and he in these scenes, if you look, he is literally crying in the scenes. Tears are all and it's just he's not a monster, you know what I mean? It's definitely Tony Todd said in one of his interviews, he wanted to be a fan of the opera. And I think that's dead on.
Phantom of the Opera?
Phantom of the Opera, yeah. I feel like that is, like I said, it's this beautiful master that is, just also, a monster at the same time. But the switch between, this majestic person versus being a monster is very close.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made any sense, but...
Kind of does.
Maybe. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. But yeah, so the one fun and cool thing that I did find out, like, so apparently when they were actually building the hook for the movie, because that is his iconic thing, was a hook. They were thinking about doing like a prosthetic arm that was like animatronic, but they didn't really see how they were going to build it in and make it work, and it just wasn't looking right. So I don't know if it was like on like a half decaying arm with a hook to it, and that's why it needed to be animatronic. They couldn't do it practical. So they ended up going with like a hook for the arm, and they went to actual blacksmith. And then they went to the blacksmith and they found this guy. He made the hook, and they said it looked beautiful, beautiful. And they was like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what we want. And they went to go pick it up. And he was like, here you go. And he's like, and what is this for? So the guy was kind of getting interested, like, oh, yeah, we're making a horror film. And it's about this character named Candyman. And he, kills his victims with a hook, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, okay. So the guy takes the hook and then puts it in a drawer. And they're like, oh, is it not ready to pick up today? And they're like, oh, no. You're not taking this. See, here we believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. And apparently the guy was super religious. And as soon as he found out it was going to be made for a horror movie, he was like, no. So like so they end up making their own hook, which I think the hook in this film.
Yeah, I think it looked fine.
It looks great. I think, and also like if you like, look at the details where you see like, it's weird, just like the how it's embedded in his skin. He's even got screws that like that I don't really understand it, but they're just, it just makes it like a 3-dimensional thing. And like I love it how when you see his arm, it's always wet. It's always wet with blood. It's never like dry blood. It hasn't healed over. It's always soaking wet. And I really think that just it's a vibe. It's like, I don't know, it gives this certain sort of type of atmosphere that I also think is very elegantly done. And the funny thing is like, when we get into like the making of this film with Virginia Madsen, which I think she does phenomenal in this movie. Yeah. And she was like, she was kind of like the second choice, which was really, like she wasn't even eyed to be the first choice to be Helen. And she was the second choice because the first lady who was actually hired to be Helen ended up becoming pregnant. And then, so I believe Virginia was supposed to be Bernadette. They actually just put her into Helen's place. And then they hired the actress they got for Bernadette.
Yeah. Which I like that duo.
Oh yeah. Great. It was great. Like, I mean, apparently they were really close and they were friendly, and that's why a lot of that their playfulness back and forth really does show in the movie. Yeah, because they were really good friends. Yeah, it came natural. Yeah, it became real natural, and it's funny because a lot of especially with women do have it hard when it comes to be having movies made, and there's times where unfortunately I'm sure it still happens these days. A lady gets a role and they're like, well, we have an ideal body weight for this role, so we would like you to lose X, Y, and Z. And I know it does suck, and it's crazy that, I mean, with guys, it does happen with guys too. Sometimes if a guy's on the chubbier side, they'll ask him like, if you're playing a, action role, like, hey, I kind of want you to beef up some, to be this like action character. But it's funny. So Bernard Rose actually wanted Virginia Madsen to actually gain weight because she was a very beautiful woman. I mean, she became very popular in the movie Dune. And she was still waiting for that one breakout role. And she really felt like Candyman was something different that she wasn't normally getting. And she thought that could be it for her. But yeah, I thought that was very funny when it was like, usually the exact opposite. Like typically they want women to lose weight, but they actually wanted her to gain weight. So she said a lot of the success was contributed to pizza.
There you go.
I don't know. I thought that was funny because I was just watching the special features because I have the Shout Factory Collector's Edition, which is the unrated cut, which is I'll show when we get to that scene. I'll show it here, just so if you haven't seen it, what you're missing. But it's not a lot. Like it's literally like maybe 3 seconds of extra footage if you want to call it that. But yeah, I mean. That's most of the really cool stuff. I mean, besides, the awesome bee scenes, which are, I guess we can talk more about that when we get to those scenes. Yeah. But I guess you can read the back of the box.
So at the top it says, stand in front of the mirror, turn the light off, and chant the word Candyman 5 times. He'll appear behind you if you believe. A child's ghost story comes to terrifying life in this gut-wrenching thriller about a graduate student whose research into modern folklore summons the spirit of the dead. Helen Lyle, played by Virginia Madsen, laughs when she interviews college freshmen about their superstitions. But when she hears about Candyman, a slave spirit with a hook hand who is said to haunt Chicago's notorious Cabrini Green housing project, she thinks she has a new twist for this thesis. Braving the gang-ridden territory to visit the site of the brutal murder, Helen arrogantly assumes Candyman can't even exist until he appears, igniting a string of terrifying, tragic slayings. But the police don't believe in monsters, and they charge Helen with the grisly crimes. And only one person can set her free, Candyman.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Yep. There we go. But yeah, so the movie kicks off with Logan's absolute favorite musical score. I don't think I've heard you rave so much about a score. And usually he does rave about scores, but this one was like next level. It is very good.
It's beautiful. All it is an organ, a piano, and a choir. And if you haven't listened to it or if you haven't heard it, when you're done watching the episode, go back and look it up on Spotify. The entire soundtrack's there. I'm telling you, some of the music, if you really like music, I don't see how it couldn't bring a tear to your eye. It is beautiful. Beautiful. Some of the best music I've ever heard in a movie, hands down. I mean, really, hands down.
So while it's playing the beautiful score, you first get Helen and Bernadette, and they are interviewing the freshmen at their local college regarding Candyman.
Yeah, they're basically they're putting together information on their thesis, and they're looking at urban folklore and myths and stuff like that. And we get basically a little intro to the Candyman mythos with a story from a babysitter who is seeing a boy, and she asks him to come over, and she's like, I really want to do something with you, but I want to do something real quick before we get into the funny business. I want to do the Candyman thing with you. And it's funny because it's Ted Raimi, which, he always shows up in horror movies here and there. And it's just so funny, the fact that he's like how he just showed up in this movie. But it's always funny when you see him. It's kind of like that. It's like the thing from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Whoa. Here I come. Oh, here I come.
So then you get your first release. So the babysitter essentially was supposed to be babysitting. Like Logan said, she tried to hook up with the person she's talking to. She goes upstairs and does Candyman, and you see Ted Raimi sitting on the couch, and he's drinking a beer, and he looks up and blood starts dripping from the ceiling. So from the bathroom, because Candyman, you can assume, has showed up and killed the babysitter. Yeah,
it's funny because she says it 4 times, and then basically, he goes back downstairs and he's waiting for her to come back down, and she's just, sitting there, and she just says it the 5th time, and she turns off the lights, and flash, there he is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with this movie is like, yes, I wouldn't really call it a gory. Like I said, I don't call this a gory movie. There are scenes of gore, but as far as what I think gory movie, I think of actual like scene mutilation and stuff like that. Like you see sprays of blood, just like you would see, in like a Quentin Tarantino film, but I wouldn't really call this a gory movie. I would say violent, but I wouldn't call this a gory movie. And that's kind of like another thing is like this movie has kills without showing you a lot, but what it does show you is a lot of blood. Doesn't mean that, you got to see intestines and entrails falling out and stuff, but you see blood in the way it sprays. And that one, like I feel like is our artistic vision of portraying violence without it being just grotesque. And it's still brutal, but without it being just like, I guess, unneeded violence, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's not unnecessary violence.
Unnecessary.
But, I mean,
that's what I was trying to get. Unnecessary.
But I mean, it kind of is. He's killing people for no reason just to keep himself going.
No, but I'm saying the type of violence the type of gore and violence that we're getting is not unnecessary. It's not like extravagant.
I get what you're saying. It applies to the plot. It's not just extra.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So then we meet Helen's husband, Trevor. He is a teacher at the university, a professor at the university, and Helen goes into his class and he's talking to one of his students. I think her name's Sarah. Stacy. And kind of like Stacy scurries off once she sees Helen. And Helen, first off, is a little put off because of that, but also because he is teaching about urban legends, but that is something that her and Bernadette obviously are trying to do and collect information on, that she wishes he would have held off on doing that lesson, on top of wondering like why that Stacy girl's being so weird and if there's something going on.
Yeah, basically she just kind of wanted them, like she wanted to she wanted him to just wait off to next semester to start to go over that lesson so they will be done with their thesis.
Yeah.
And because they're putting a lot of time and effort into this and they just feel like it will be for, what's the word I'm looking for? Where like, it will be looked over based off of the lesson. I don't know. Like,
well, I think the main thing is like, they don't want anything to impact their theses and their research. And if you're sitting there talking about urban legends and people start talking about Candyman and talking about how it's not real, then people might feel more dismissed to actually share their story about it. So it could impact, like if you're talking about like a true like thesis and like investigation, you could taint those that would actually be like interviewed and might have information if they already are, have already talked about the topic or whatever.
Gotcha. Or I probably could like draw people to it to talk more about it that shouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah, to maybe fabricate stories or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But so pretty much Trevor just kind of brushes her off. He also says Stacy's nothing and that he really just wanted to get this lesson done. He felt like it was a good lesson and he wanted to do it.
Yeah, and Trevor is like, through this whole movie, he's a piece of POS, 100%. And the thing is, if you watch The Walking Dead, he's the actor that plays Gregory, which was a piece of shit in The Walking
Dead.
Like
The Walking Dead.
What's called? I mean, like it was good for like maybe 4 seasons and went down pretty quick. But I mean, they were for what it was and what was on TV at the time. I think they were doing a really good job at doing their thing.
Don't like it. I mean, I watched a few different episodes and then I watched like in the first season and then I like watched sporadic episodes because other people were watching it that I was hanging out with and it just never really hit the spot.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, I'm not a big zombie guy. And like, I kept on going back to it because of the storyline and I was compelled by what was happening and people, because the thing is like the zombie stuff freaks me out. Like I know it's not real, but it's like,
you're like, it's the closest thing to reality.
I don't know.
In your view. Some people do feel that way. So, I mean, it makes sense.
I don't know. But yeah, it is. I just know every Sunday after I would go to bed after watching the latest episode, I'd always have a nightmare.
Yeah, I feel that.
As an adult, yes.
It'd be like that sometimes.
But yeah, anyway, he's Gregory, and he's a horrible person that on that show. And, Trevor is also a horrible person. But yeah, so he basically brushes off. Don't worry about Stacy. She's just madly in love with me, but, you're my wife and I love you. All this yada, yada bullshit. So then it cuts to, she's back in her classroom and she's working on her thesis and she's listening to one of her recordings and a janitor overhears it and is like, oh, you're doing research on Candyman. And she's like, oh yeah. She goes, oh, my friend has a story about Cabrini Green. Do you want to hear it? And she's like, oh yeah. Can you get your friend? And so then he calls her friend over. And her friend comes in. She's like, "Hey, tell her the story about the lady in the apartment." And there's a story basically where Candyman comes through the window. Comes through the glass mirror. And apparently this lady kept on calling the the authorities multiple times, calling 911, saying he's here, he's coming through my mirror, he's in my bathroom, I need help. And she made multiple calls, and then other people were calling because they heard her screams. By the time someone actually got to the apartment, the lady was found dead. And, she asked, well, how was she killed? And she was like, oh, she was cut all to pieces. And they said it was done by a hook.
Yeah.
And the thing is the lady who knows the story, you can see a resistance on her telling the story.
Yeah, because she doesn't want to talk about the legend. She doesn't want to talk about Candyman.
She's like, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, because then Helen started to probe and ask more questions, and that's when the woman backs off and she says, I shouldn't even be talking about this. I need to go.
Yeah, and the thing is so a lot, the thought process, is where people in Cabrini Green are making this Candyman storyline up to face the reality of their own terror of living in that space.
Yeah.
That's what the philosophical way of, Candyman was invented for people to to normalize their own terror outside their door and stuff like that in that area. Because
if people are getting killed left and right and murdered left and right, you obviously want some sort of answers. And if the police aren't bringing you answers, and you don't want to accept the fact that it's just because you live in a high crime area, a good solution is to make up a person and just blame it on them.
And that's another thing. So this is a good part where we see a transition from the book to the movie. It's because in this scene where she's going through this rabbit hole, looking at the newspaper clippings and stuff like that, in the book, she's trying to have a conversation with Trevor. She's like, listen, why don't we know about this? I've never heard of this. I would think I would hear about this. But it's the fact of you are so far removed what other people in this life are dealing with. That's why you haven't heard about it.
Yeah.
And also people aren't telling these stories because they don't care about these people enough to tell their story.
And then the people that it's happening to are terrified.
Exactly.
So why would they talk about it?
Exactly.
They also don't trust you. So why would they talk to you?
Exactly. Because that's, they even make another point when she shows up, Anne Marie's like, when Watts show up, they're not too kind around here. Yeah. So nothing good comes when y'all Watts show up, because it's people showing up to capitalize on their pain.
Yeah.
And it's awful. It's awful. And the thing is, and it's not like that's not real. That part of the storyline is 100% real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, this is a good way where we can see it a little bit more into the book, because some of the book is very similar to the movie. Some of the characters, are slightly changed, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to those scenes. But this is a good way of where we're kind of getting what we got, because originally she shows up to Cabrini Green just for the graffiti, and that's how she finds out about Candyman. She didn't even know. She wasn't even doing anything about any kind of myth or any kind of legends. So that's kind of like how they were able to write a new story to get her to Cabrini Green.
So she takes all this news to Bernadette, and they are at Helen's house, I believe, her apartment, whatever. And they're going over all the information, and they decide to test the myth out. They're going to go stand in front of the mirror and say it 5 times and see what happens. And you get a fake jump scare. Ultimately, they never say it 5 times, so nothing happens. Yeah,
Helen does. So that was Helen says it 5 times, but Bernadette doesn't.
Yeah,
and that's the whole big thing. And so they're doing their research, and also Helen also found out her expensive ass apartment that she spent a lot of money on, the one that her and Trevor live in.
Yeah, it has easy access behind the mirror.
But it's built the exact same way that Cabrini Green is built. So it's used out of cheap material, cheap cinder block, and all they did was put drywall over the cinder block, because apparently that was a big thing. Cabrini Green, you had people that could literally just break into other people's apartment by smashing through the wall.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. People weren't even safe in their own homes with their doors locked.
Yeah, let alone the bathroom, a sacred space.
Well, and that's another thing. Yeah, that's why it makes sense. It would make sense. Okay, well, how did someone come into the bathroom through the mirror? Yeah, because there's a false wall that leads into the next apartment. So that logically kind of does make sense
Yeah.
once we kind of unravel of the storyline behind how Cabrini Green was built and so forth.
Yeah. So following Helen saying it 5 times and Bernadette not doing it, nothing happens. However, they both agree that they are now going to go to Cabrini Green and see what's going on there. And this is more Helen's idea. You can see that Bernadette's like very hesitant that they shouldn't belong there. They try to dress in like formal but not too formal attire because they don't want to look like cops, but they want to be taken seriously. And Bernadette the whole time is very, very hesitant. She just wants to get in and get out of there because she doesn't even want to go there in the first place. So they pull up to the projects and like, most not so good areas, there is kind of like, I don't want to call them a gang. I don't want to coin people like that. But there are unpleasant people standing, outside the building where they need to go past. And they kind of make their way past them just after a little bit of gruff, like nothing.
Well, those were real gang members.
Well, I know that. You mentioned that.
Yeah, no, like those were real gang members. And that was the big thing is like Cabrini Green was run by the gangs. Like, and it had such a bad reputation. And Helen, Virginia Madsen actually grew up in Chicago and she already knew about Cabrini Green before she even got this role. Like people knew you didn't go there.
Yeah.
Kind of like there's places in Baltimore you don't go.
Which Logan still doesn't understand, nonetheless.
Well, who doesn't understand the damn GPS? That's who doesn't understand.
No, but you also don't understand.
Freaking every time.
Not as good as I do.
Every time we come home from Baltimore, every single time, it always takes us through the ghetto. Every single time.
Mind you, the ghetto is where I grew up the first, 10 years of my life.
Well, no, but you didn't grow up where we go through.
Well, no, we moved. Yeah, I did right across Ritchie Highway.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the bad parts, like the real bad parts where by the railroad tracks and.
Yeah, but the whole area is not that great.
No, it's not.
Which is why my family moved out of there. But nonetheless.
Yeah.
So they end up getting past them after several warnings and stuff, and they commit Helen and Bernadette to each other. Like they're just going to be real quick. So Bernadette's just kind of tagging along. Helen's taking pictures as they go up to the floor where the apartment is supposedly at, where the murder happened that the janitor shared with them. And as they're going down the apartment doors, they see the suites to the suite.
Yeah, which is
graffitied against on the wall.
Well, so apparently that was taken. Clive Barker took that from Hamlet, and he wanted to put it in there because I don't remember the long story behind it because I've never read Hamlet. But so that was him. Like I said, for that in itself, you can already tell the kind of artistic vision that Clive Barker had. And as they're passing by the apartment, this is where you get introduced to Anne-Marie and her Rottweiler. She comes out holding her dog and kind of questions them what they're doing here and warns them that they shouldn't be here, but keeps the conversation brief and heads back inside after pretty much saying like she doesn't want them there and whatever. Yeah, so they end up going into the apartment where the lady was found dead, and they're taking pictures and so forth, and they're trying to put their theory to the test. So they go in the bathroom and they open up the mirror and the medicine cabinet in the mirror, and they see leads right into the next apartment over. So they're like, okay, well that's where that person must have came from. So then they go into the next apartment over. Pretty
much like each step confirms the story that they were told. So they see a big mess in the bathroom that looks, it confirms also the news that they read and stuff. So they, see the big mess in the bathroom like a murder had happened. They pull the mirror off. They confirm the holes there, which is said to be where Candyman came from. And at this point in time, Bernadette's like ready to turn around.
Oh, yeah,
she's like, okay, we saw it. We see it. Let's go. Let's leave. It's time for us to go. And Helen decides to climb into the next room despite Bernadette giving her every reason why she shouldn't.
And then we see this beautiful graffiti done of the Candyman's face as she crawls out of it, which is my really cool Candyman shirt that I haven't talked about yet, but by Horror Gods. Check him out on Instagram. He has some really cool stuff. But yeah, we see this awesome, well done graffiti of this like pretty scary looking individual. And and it's just so cool where she climbs out of his mouth and into the next room. And on the floor, you see candy that's been laid on the floor with open wrappers and chocolates. And then you find razor blades in it, which is, what cautionary tale have you not heard about Halloween putting razor blades,
putting stuff in candy?
Which is another thing is, so like this is common, like, the Candyman storyline was inspired by a cautionary tale that Clive Barker's grandmother used to tell him about not trusting strangers and about this character that used to go around cutting off little boys' privates and stuff, which, we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, so like she, finds that and, she's making her way back. We get another cute little jump scare where she comes out and she's
I like how you call these jump scares cute. None of them are cute. They're jump scares. Those two things don't go together. You don't think it was cute when I jump scare you?
I don't think it's cute. Yeah, I definitely don't think it's cute.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
There we go. Jump scares aren't cute. Funny, not cute.
But she pops out. She's like, I need to go back and get more film. She's like, no.
We're done here,
You're done. You're done.
Yeah, that sounds like me and Sierra. She's like, just a few. No, you're done. Let's go. So they end up leaving, and you get Helen, Bernadette, Trevor, and Purcell, which I assume is like another professor at the school, all having dinner together. And Helen and Bernadette are going on and on about their theses and the Candyman and their thoughts on it. And Purcell pretty much is like not even taking them serious. He just is just laughing at them. And even Trevor, I think, like in a scene, you can see him kind of like chuckling under his breath, pretty much like belittling them. They think it's ridiculous that they're even feeding into this myth or legend. Yeah,
it's bad. This Purcell guy he's awful. He's most not obnoxious. What do I mean? Like, what's the word where like you think your shit don't stink and you're just, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you think you're so much better than somebody.
I can't think of it right now. So it's my tongue.
He's just so like snobby and just, like he's pretentious. He's just so freaking pretentious. And it's so freaking annoying. And the thing is I remember when I went to college and I would have certain professors that acted like that. And you just want to kick them in their teeth. You're like, relax. You're just a college professor. Okay.
Yeah.
Chill. All right. No one just that kind of like, almost like if you ever talk to someone who, when they're having a conversation with you, they close their eyes when they speak a lot. I'm like, look at me. Stop closing your damn eyes and just give me eye contact. I don't know. That's just like, just fucking look at me. I don't know if you know what I mean, but like, if whatever, put it in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, he is a horrible character, and he shows up in the second one. And spoiler alert, he gets killed in the second one, which is awesome. But that's probably the only good part about the second one. But yeah, he's just basically like, oh, you're doing story on Candyman? Well, you must have read my paper that I've already done, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh, you don't know the story of Candyman. And then we get into the story of Candyman. So you find out Candyman was a slave. And he was basically he was the best. I don't know how the best way to say it, like he was he had received a lot more opportunities than a lot of other slaves during that time would have received. He had good schooling, he had a good upbringing, and he was very elegant and very artsy. He was a very talented painter, and he would be hired to paint pictures of the plantation's owners. And one day he was hired to paint a picture of a certain plantation owner's daughter, and they end up falling madly in love. And unfortunately, the plantation owner found out. So what they did is they chased him out of town. They end up catching him, cutting off his hand, which he's an artist. So you can understand how awful of a thing that could be to lose your hand that you perform all your incredible artwork and what you kind of like live and die for. To have that taken away with you, not by your choice, is awful. Now, that wasn't good enough, they also found a hive and rubbed honey all over you, and then you were stung to death by bees.
Yeah.
And the theory is that due to the fact the way he died, he did not go to the afterlife.
Yeah, he was stuck in purgatory.
He had been reincarnated as a spirit of vengeance. And that is the theory and the running theme through the film, because that plays in later with Helen. But when you die in such a bad way, you become remembered based off the story of how awful your death was, and you become a spirit of vengeance.
Yeah. So the dinner comes to a close, and you get Helen returning back to Cabrini Green with more film to take the pictures, this time by herself. And she runs into a little boy named Jake, and essentially, poor little kid, she just like convinces him, if you help me find out who Candyman is, it'll be our secret and you'll be safe. And because Jake tells her that, she's really scared. We don't mess with him. He's not nice. He really shouldn't be doing this. And she pretty much says, like, if you tell me, it'll be our secret and I won't tell anyone and I'll make sure you're safe.
Yeah. And it's funny because the way she gets him is like, he's like, he goes, I ain't scared of nothing. And that's how she gets him. She's like, well, if you're not scared of nothing,
then you'd show me where Candyman is.
Yeah. So this, we're going to get a little bit back into the book now. But he basically tells her a story of a little boy that had an encounter with Candyman at the bathroom. He was a special needs boy. In the book, everything that's real. It's two ladies telling the story, but that part is in the book.
Yeah.
But he's not a child. He is he's a full-grown adult, but he has the mind of a child.
Yeah.
That's the best way that they explain it. But he tells them the story where there's a little boy who was at the market across the street with his mom and had to use the bathroom, and he was special needs and he couldn't really communicate well. So his mom agreed for him to run across the street to use the public bathroom, and then time had passed and he had not come back, and you hear, screams. Then a person from the neighborhood went to go check in on him, and the little boy was lying on the floor with his privates cut off, and they were floating in the toilet. And like I said, you don't see it happen, but the imagery, is very, very rough. I mean, this poor, I will say, there's two parts of my life where I've seen this movie. I saw this movie before Grayson was born. And then I've seen it multiple times, but then the second part of my life, when I saw it after Grayson was born, I will say the scene is rough. It is hard
personally,
to watch.
I clock out when it has to do with children, special needs, or animals. That's when I'm like, nope, I'm done. Screw you. The thing is, I really don't like when horror films enter those realms where children or people, of special needs or, non-typical people are harmed, because it's like you could do so many other things and you don't have to touch those topics. Like, you really don't. And I get why directors and writers do it, because it strikes people. Like, it hits people where it hurts the most. And I guess in some ways it draws people in, but I just really feel like we could have so many horror films and just not even touch those topics.
Well, it's crazy because
they should be off limits.
I'm not gonna lie. Upon a rewatching of this, I'd be lying if I didn't say if I said I did not shed a single tear, because I will say it was rewatching it, just thinking about, it was a child, you know what I mean? Especially a special needs child, to have something like that awful happen to him.
Personally, I hate writers that choose to do that.
I would prefer, to be honest, if it would have been a lot easier to handle if it would have been just like the book, where it had been adult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, an adult without special needs.
I mean, yeah, but it's not going to have the gravity. It's not going to have the heaviness and the impact.
I can deal without that gravity. Because the thing is, even an adult with special, this is a hill I'll die on every single day of my life. Even an adult with special needs, they, in their minds and their mental capacity, is still a child. So it's still just as terrifying and traumatic and scary as if it was a child. They were just in an adult's body.
I just keep on telling myself when I watch the scene, I'm like, it is just a movie. It's not real. Don't be upset about it.
Again, that's a hill I die on every day.
No, you're fine. You're yeah.
No animals, no children, no humans with special needs. That's it.
But yeah, so she's looking around after she gets the toy cell. So she goes in there, she starts looking around, and you have sweets to the sweet written in shit on the walls. She's looking at it and she goes to the stall where it's supposed to happen, opens it up. It's full of bees. And she's about to leave. And then all of a sudden, we see a guy that talks to the little boy and he just goes, Candyman. And then he walks in and, you got this guy's, you're looking for Candyman, bitch. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, I'm just on my way out. And he knocks the fucking shit out of her.
Yeah, with a hook.
With a hook. And even like the way he hits her with the hook and you see like almost like a little mist of sweat that goes out the back of her head to show the impact of the blow. I thought was really well done.
I didn't notice that.
And then so she, we cut to, she's in the police department, and she's looking up a lineup of people, and she's trying to pick out the individual who done this. Finds out this guy has been linked to a lot of murders, and they believe he's also linked to the murder of the individual apartment and the little boy. Yeah. That's what they're stating. Now, as far as if that's true or not, we don't know. But as far as the movie goes, the detective basically says, like, we've linked him to all those murders, and now we have a witness, and now we can actually put him under.
And then you get a really sad scene where Helen comes out and Jake is sitting there, and he's like, I thought this was going to be our secret. I'm going to get hurt now. And like, he's scared and he wants to go home. Because like she suckered him into it.
But now then because he is scared that Candyman's going to get her.
I know, but still, it's still.
No, I agree. Yeah. But then she sat there and she tells him, listen.
Yeah, he's going away. Yeah.
Candyman is not real. He's not real. There is no Candyman, and he's not going to get you. That's the end of it. You don't have to worry, Jake. So when we cut over to Helen is heading back to school, and she runs into Bernadette. And she has the film from the camera. The camera was saved, and she thought the camera was crushed, and the film was not saved from that day of her taking the reshoots.
Yeah.
And Bernadette was able to save the film and put it in the nice slides for her so she can go back and view it. So she heads back to her car, and this is when we get our first real encounter with the Candyman.
Yeah. So Helen gets to her car in the parking lot, in the parking garage, and she goes to open her trunk to put the film bags in. I'm assuming she's probably going to go home and look at them. And you get this ominous, I think it's like a voice. Yeah. He calls her name.
Helen.
Yeah. So he calls her name in a very ominous tone, and she turns around and you realize that it's Candyman.
Yeah. And it is chilling.
Yeah.
Even the set, even his outfit is well done. He's got, I believe he's got houndstooth pants with very nice leather shoes. He has got this black coat with fur accents and fur around the rim of his sleeves. And it is just the way he speaks, very like Shakespearean, not even Shakespearean, but just very, like I said, very elegant.
Very formal.
Very formal. There you go. Very, very formal. And he basically expressed that, you have doubted me, and now I must show you, and due to your doubt, and I must shed blood so people can continue to believe in me.
Yeah.
Because that's the theory, is as long as people believe in him, he is still the spirit of vengeance.
Yeah.
He is a myth. He lives based off the myth. If you crush the myth and people stop to believe, he will stop existing.
Yeah. So then you flash and Helen wakes up in Anne-Marie's bathroom covered in blood. And Anne-Marie is on the other side of the door freaking out. And Helen opens the door and realizes that Anne-Marie's dog's head has been decapitated. Again, children and dogs and special needs. I don't do it. And Anne-Marie's freaking out looking for her baby.
Yeah, baby Anthony is missing.
Yeah. And so Anne-Marie and mind you, Helen wakes up covered in blood, also holding a butcher knife. So forgot that part. But Anne-Marie kind of attacks her and is asking her, what did you do? What did you do? Where's my baby? Where's my baby? And for some reason, Helen, while trying to like get her off and calm her down, also decides to like stab her. I guess to like
she's beating up on her, and she's in fear. She's trying to get her to calm down, and she ends up whacking her in the arm.
It looked on purpose, though.
Well, yeah, but the thing is like, and once again, like this is what I'm talking about, like the spray, the way the blood just squirts out of her arm and stuff, and she's trying to get her to calm down and relax because what had happened was. Candyman. So when he comes in contact with Helen, he puts her in a trance.
Yeah, hypnotizes her.
He hypnotizes her, which Virginia Madsen was legitimately hypnotized for this film. Her and the director, Bernard Rose, went off to a hypnotist, and they actually hypnotized her. And the hypnotist gave him a special word to put her in and take her out. But for these scenes with Candyman, to give her that glossy look, she is legitimately, usually it's the close-ups. When it's the close-ups on her eyes and you see basically where
they're red and watery.
And watery, and almost you can tell the light is coming more down on her eyelashes and stuff like that. And she's got a little bit more mascara placed on her face. These are the hypnosis scenes. But she's under a trance, and we're led to believe that while under this trance, she went and cut the head off of the Anna Marie's dog and
kidnapped the baby. Mind you, if Anne Marie was at work, who was watching the baby?
That was the one thing we did was one of our so was Anne Marie just leaving the baby home with the Rottweiler and just hoping the baby would be okay?
Yeah, who knows? But so she gets arrested. The police bust in. They arrest Helen. She gets processed, and she starts to get questioned, and they're like questioning her hard. Where's the baby? We'll get you for murder. We'll get you for animal cruelty, kidnapping, whatever it is, we'll get you. Tell us where Anthony is. And she has no answers because she literally has no idea. She doesn't think she did this.
100%. And she's, mind you, they find her covered, soaking wet,
yeah, she's
covered
begging
in
to change
blood.
her clothes. They won't let her change her clothes. So finally they process her. And all she can do really is ask for a phone call. And she tries to call Trevor, and Trevor doesn't answer. So she's stuck there until Trevor finally comes and bails her out.
Yeah, so he bails her out, and they're leaving, and they're talking with her lawyer, and they're trying to figure out what's going on.
And they're pretty much like begging her, like, do you recall anything? What's the last thing you remember? Nothing. Like, how did you end up there? And she literally has no answers.
No answers at all. And then she's also worried, like, do you think I actually did this?
Yeah.
You know, and the thing at the moment is the real true thing is they really don't have anything to 100% prove that she did it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look good to be sitting there covered in blood.
Yeah, with a decapitated dog and a woman crying
child.
for a baby. Yeah.
So basically it cuts over. She is going to start to look at the film that was salvaged, and she's putting on it on her projector. She's going through the film and looking at different scenes.
Mind you, sorry, before she starts looking at the film, she gets in the bath, and Trevor, so his wife is being accused of murder, just was in a very gruesome event, whether she did it or not, still a gruesome event. And he's like, well, I really, really don't want to leave you, but I'll be back in 20 minutes.
Yeah, true.
I'll only be 20 minutes. And she asks him, Trevor, where were you last night? And he says he was sound asleep. That's why he didn't wake up. He wasn't home.
Yeah, we knew that. We knew that.
Yeah, so she is left alone now. Trevor leaves for his 20 minutes to go do whatever. And she's flipping through the film.
Yeah, she's flipping through the film, and she comes up across a photo that she took while she was in the bathroom. And something doesn't look too right. So she starts to look into the mirror and starts to refocus, and she sees Candyman standing behind her in the mirror. And she walks away, heads into the bathroom to clear her head, and starts looking at the mirror. And while she's just sitting there, like, I guess thinking like, there's no way this could be real, I'm losing my mind. And that's when we get another jump scare of Tony Todd's Candyman sticking his arms out of the mirror to try to get her. This was a real scene. So that was actually, she didn't know that she did not know he was actually going to do that.
Yeah.
She was not told that. She was just told to go into the bathroom, look down, and kind of like look worried.
Yeah.
And their director really wanted to get her real authentic reaction. And Tony Todd said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. That's not fun. And that's not fair to her. That's, it's like he didn't believe in it. But they finally convinced him. And he was very upset after he did it, because he was very worried about because he loved Virginia. They had a very good relationship, and he didn't want to do anything to, tarnish that. And we're adults here.
Well, also, you got to think as actors. I don't really know, but psychologically, you have to assume when they do films like this weighs on them in some way, shape, or form, like a psychological aspect. I'm sure it's probably hard to balance and separate yourself from this is film, this is reality, this is my job, this is reality, and keep the two separate. So I can kind of get that. You're already filming a very dark film, and then they're like, hee ha, just jump scare her anyway.
Yeah. So Candyman reaches out for her, so she takes off running, and there he has teleported into front of her, and he's like, come with me or more innocent blood will be shed.
Yeah.
If you knew what lies beyond this point, you would not want to stay alive.
Yeah, why do you even want to be here, essentially?
You would not want to be here. You would want to be with me. And he starts to hypnotize her again. And she's trying to attack him with a knife, and she ends up collapsing. And who gets caught in the crossfire but poor Bernadette?
Yeah, so she comes to check on Helen, and she's knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking on the door with flowers, trying to get Helen to answer because she knows Helen's home. And she comes in, she gets through the door and sees Candyman there and is just starstruck.
Yeah.
Just frozen. Freeze or flight, whatever the three things are.
Yeah, fight or flight.
Yeah, and two things are. And she just freezes. And unfortunately, Helen watches Candyman kill Bernadette.
Yeah, and that's another thing is once again, we don't see how he kills her.
Yeah.
We just see the aftermath. And once again, very well done. Yes,
Yeah.
This is not one of those movies where I'm going to show you how this happens. Don't get me wrong. I love slashers that do that. I love people getting their hands hacked off and getting a meat cleaver in the neck and punctured by a hook and stuff like that. I like seeing that stuff. We don't get that kind of stuff here, or we get it, but it's always out of sight.
Yeah.
And like I said, I really do think that adds a type of class to this type of horror. And I really strongly think that when you go back, if you haven't seen this in a while and you rewatch it, you don't remember these scenes this way, I really feel like you're going to see this movie in a new light. And I think you're going to have a lot more respect for it than you did previously if you haven't seen this movie in a while.
Yeah, so Helen obviously gets caught, and they think that she killed Bernadette, so she gets taken to a mental hospital. While she's there and strapped down in the bed, she starts to come to after they sedated her, and she starts screaming that he's here, he's here, he's here, and they sedate her again, essentially. And the next time she comes to, she meets with a psychologist and finds out that it has been a month. So she has been in here for a month. She only recalls arriving.
Yeah.
And seeing him, and that's it. So the psychologist plays the film of the video room surveillance of where she's screaming and yelling that he's here, and tries to have a conversation with her about what was she seeing? Was he talking to her? And the psychologist advises that his job is to see whether she is sane enough to stand trial.
Yeah, he's working for her defense.
Yeah. So he starts asking her, were you seeing something? Was it talking to you? What was happening? And she decides she's going to prove it to him by calling in Candyman into the room.
Yeah, so she ends up looking in the mirror, and she sat there. She's like, I can make him appear. And she says it 5 times. And, he's sitting there. She's also kind of worried. She looks around. Nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden, he is starting to gut, basically, the psychologist through the spine with his hook. This is the one scene that was cut from American release.
Mm-hmm.
It is not really graphic, but you see
You see him bent over.
You see him bent over, but you see more blood spraying.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more blood coming out of his mouth, and you see more blood spraying in the opposite direction of his back. Like I said, I'll put the clip here so y'all can see it for yourself. Which I don't understand why they took it out, because the original cut of the film was NC-17, and that's what they had to remove, because for some reason they were cool with a child being with their privates cut off. They were cool with a dog getting its head cut off, but for some reason, blood splattering was what did them in, and I thought that was just stupid. But
yeah. So Helen then takes this as an opportunity to undo her cuffs because she's, straddled.
Well, Candyman cuts them off.
Yeah, he cuts them off, and she takes them off the rest of the way, and she takes this as a chance to escape. So she escapes, knocks a nurse out after scaling into another room, puts that nurse's clothes on, and goes home to Trevor to find out that Stacy has moved in and is remodeling their apartment. However, Trevor does not know she's there yet, but Stacy does.
Yeah, it's awful. Like I said, Trevor is a piece of shit. And this is just the icing on the cake. And like I said, if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, same fucking character. I feel like that is, if you want to have a combined universe, that is, if Trevor doesn't die at the end of the movie, that would be Trevor in the Walking Dead series.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's shocked to find that she's there. Stacy's scared to shit.
Yeah.
I mean, she's literally collapsing.
So they threaten to call 911, or they're trying to call 911, but Helen kind of scares them out of it. And she ends up just giving up on the conversation. And you can see her come to terms with, I guess, the fact that she's just like, I just don't even want to live. And so where does she take off to? She takes off to Cabrini Green to go find Candyman herself. So she's going to go to him this time.
Yeah, she came to the terms like, okay, if I give him what he wants, he'll let the child go. At this point, I've got nothing left.
Yeah.
Might as well do it. And she also goes there. She finds him sleeping, and she also goes to attack him with a hook, and he just pulls it right out of his throat. Blood squirts everywhere, and he's just like, and it doesn't harm him at all. And this is another scene that was cut. Now, this wasn't cut due to the NC-17 rating, but this scene was cut because I guess they felt like it went on a little bit too long. But he starts to basically hypnotize her again, and he's like, give yourself to me. I will let the child go, and then you will live with me forever. And he sweeps her off her feet. They start to dance. They start to do a very elegant ballroom dance. And I know it might have been.
Yeah, it does seem drawn out.
I would like to have seen that because, like I said, I love the music. The music's beautiful. I'm not an artsy fartsy kind of guy, but sometimes I like a little bit of art, and I like a little bit of I like to be thrilled a little bit. And sometimes I like to see something that I feel like is just beautiful, even though nothing's happening. I want to just hold on this for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So they cut their scene a little bit short, and she's like, come with me. And, all I need is a kiss. And he goes to give her a kiss. And this is when we get the epic reveal where he opens up his coat. His entire flesh of his chest has been rotted away. And all it is lungs and a bee's nest.
Yeah.
And he goes to bend down to give her a kiss, and we see bees just falling on her face. And this is when they brought in the famous Norman Gray, Norman Gary, which was a famous
beekeeper.
He was in the movie. They used him on the movie My Girl, Fried Green Tomatoes, and so forth. And let alone, I mean, the bee element, because bees are very. If you're allergic to bees, they're very scary.
Yeah.
I mean, they're definitely an insect you don't want to fuck with.
Yeah.
And this is this scene in itself, hands down. I think if you want to do the top, I would say the top 20 most memorable horror scenes of all time. This scene is 100% in that top 20. If it's not in your list of top 20, because the thing is, the scene like this is it is very terrifying far as if you put yourself in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
B, it's terrifying to think if you're in the shoes of the actors that are dealing with it, I mean, it's C was very unpredictable because it's an insect. You can't really train bees what to do.
Well, yeah,
you know
obviously.
What I mean?
It's a bug.
And surprisingly, I think they said Tony Todd had only been stung like 27 times through all 3 films, which I feel like that's
Only
a
27.
that's a very low number based off of like I think they had over 500 bees on them at one time.
Yeah,
it's really crazy. And apparently the bees were not supposed to sting because they were born less than 24 hours. That's after 24 hours is when they start to develop their stingers. So they were all like baby bees.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like this scene, it is burned into my brain from being a little kid without even seeing the movie. I knew what this scene was. It's great scene.
Yeah. So that happens, and now her main focus is still to save the baby. She's let herself go, but she still wants to save the baby. So she heads to a bonfire because she hears the baby crying, and it sounds like it's crying from this giant mound of rubble or whatever.
She's woken up from her hypnosis state or whatever, and she hears the baby crying, and she needs, and that basically throughout this entire movie, we had seen they call it the bonfire. They put up trash for a bonfire, which that's also in the book. So now we get into another of the book territory because this is mainly part of the book is her going into the rubble to find the baby, because in the book it's never said exactly how it's happened, but the baby's actually found dead in Anne-Marie's apartment. Now, it's never said that Anne-Marie actually murdered the baby or if it was done by Candyman, but he finds out that the baby has been placed in the rubble. And she takes upon herself to get the baby out of the rubble because she doesn't think that's right, and it's been set on fire. So now that was the book. So we cut to the storyline of the movie, and that's what we're doing. We're going into the rubble to find the baby and take the baby out. This was really well done, how they shot this and built this, and just, it looks super claustrophobic, which is also scary. It's also dealing with fire because what we don't know is she's using the hook to kind of climb around.
Yeah.
Jake wakes up by hearing the baby, and he sees the hook. He thinks that Candyman's there.
Yeah.
Mind you, the Cabrini Green believe in the Candyman.
Yeah.
They believe in the Candyman. So when someone says Candyman's in there, let's burn them, they all come out to burn Candyman because they're
ready to be done with the myth.
Exactly.
Or not the myth. They're ready to be done with it in general.
Exactly. So Helen goes in there. Unfortunately, the rubble has been turned into a flame due to the bonfire, and she goes to save Anthony, but it's a trick. So the whole point this time was they needed, once again, when I say they, I mean Candyman. Candyman needed Helen to die in the almost similar way how he died.
Yeah.
So she can become a spirit of vengeance so they can be together forever, because Candyman believes she is a reincarnation of his first love. That's why when he tells her, it was always you, Helen. It's always been you. And that's what he's been searching for. He wants his long lost love. And yes, he is killing people so he can stay alive. But the thought of that is very heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
The fact that you were killed because you love someone you weren't supposed to love, which it's an awful thing to think about. It's horrific. And it's so sad. It is so sad. I'm not saying that I reason with his actions, because I don't reason with his actions, but I can understand how you can somewhat feel something for this individual on what he chooses to do.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make it right, but he's not just a mindless killer. You know what I mean? But yeah, so he is basically, he is going to make sure that she dies in the fire with the baby, so that, it looks like that she took the baby to the fire, and,
But she ends up being able to escape the fire enough for the people outside the fire to see that she has Anthony in her hands. So she crawls out of the fire, but her body's on fire. And Anne-Marie and Jake run up and grab Anthony. And the people of Cabrini Green try to put out the fire on her. Unfortunately, though, she did not make it. She does pass. And it snaps over to her funeral. I do want to point out, though, when she comes out of the fire, she looks like Angelica Stahl from Rugrats. I'll have Logan put a picture here. I said that during the film. But
it's also cool because like I like the scene where she stabs him with the flaming stake to get out, and he's just yelling and while he's burning, and it's very, very well done. And he's just like, once again, we've got these scenes of Tony Todd, and he is putting everything on that. Nothing is left on the table. He's putting everything there. He is putting all of his emotions in these scenes. He's literally physically crying. He's calling back to her, come back, because that's all he really wants is not to be alone. Like I said, this movie, it's gut wrenching. I don't have a very large vocabulary, but I feel like there are a lot of cool words I could insert here. But if you do know what I mean, insert the words in your head.
Anyways, so you get to Helen's funeral, and at first it's just Trevor and his girlfriend, as well as like 2 other people. However, all the residents of Cabrini Green show up and pay their respects as well, including Jake and Anne-Marie. So she does get a nice closure. They throw flowers down there. They also throw the hook down there because, ideally Candyman is dead from their understanding now because of the fire.
Exactly. Like she came in and she saved them from Candyman. Yeah.
So to them, that's a hero. However, you move on and you get to Trevor's apartment, and Trevor is clearly having a very difficult time mentally with this loss. He's in the bathroom contemplating his decisions while Stacy is trying to get him to come out and help her cook, and she's kind of annoyed and seems over it because in her mind, Helen's gone. That's, she's not going to be any trouble to them anymore. She's not going to be in the way. However, Helen pays Trevor a visit because now she is seeking vengeance, just like how Candyman set her up to. And she ends up murdering Trevor, essentially. And now tables have almost turned because Stacy runs into the bathroom with a knife because she was just cooking food in the kitchen. And it looks like she killed Trevor. And that's when you get your cut scene.
Oh, it's great. And then it cuts over to, once again, playing Philip Glass's beautiful music. We get over the mural. The mural of Candyman has now been changed to what's called Helen basically ascending out of flames. Yeah. And now Helen is their savior. Which I get it. Some people don't really like that ending because they're like, oh, yeah, the white person came in and saved all the black people. I get it. I understand how in some ways that cannot be as tasteful. But I will say it is still a good story, even that is what's the case. Yes, could Helen been black this entire time? Yes, but it wouldn't make sense with the whole him being in love with someone he's not supposed to be in love with, because it really makes more sense for her to be a white woman. But yeah, I understand that people have that kind of complaint, but I will say, like, as far as the ending goes, like I said, this is a fantastic story. And I really, really, really love this movie. And I just don't think it's talked about a lot. So that's why I want to talk about it. But also I know you've never seen it and I want to show it to you and see what you thought. So now I think I already know what the answer is going to be, but now enlighten us. What did you think of the movie?
I don't like it. I just really don't. Like, yeah, whatever. It's artsy. I don't really care for artistic films. Some, but not all of them. Yeah, I just don't really like it. That's it. I mean, it really is. I will say it did scare me. This is probably the first film we've watched that I was actually worried I was going to have nightmares.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I don't like the whole like ominous things popping up. And like I, as a kid, was always terrified of like the mirrors in the bathroom, especially
Bloody
at night
Mary
and stuff. Yeah, like Bloody Mary, like that fucked me up. That like terrified me. So yeah, so watching this, I'm really not down for. I don't like jump scares. And what is like your most typical jump scare? You sitting in a bathroom saying something and something jumping out of the mirror. Same thing like Grudge got me, where they come out the damn bathroom drain. Like I just don't like it.
I understand where you're coming from, because there's also horror movies that I don't personally like. And that I'm not really into.
And guess what? We'll never review those, but we'll sure as hell review the ones I don't like.
No, I mean, if for example, if you liked one of those, I would review it and I would be honest with it. But I like to be honest, there's just some horror movies.
I'd like a signature with that.
There's just horror movies don't get me wrong. Yes, I will eventually see them, but there's movies like I might see once and I have no desire to see again, because I don't fuck with those. When I say I don't fuck with those, I mean like they don't tickle my interest. I just don't care to see that kind of story.
You don't really like cult films. I'd be down to do like a cult horror film.
Cult. I don't mind cult.
Cults are fun.
I don't mind cult films at all. Like I don't. It's not that. It's more like certain. This is going to sound contradicting, but like this is like kind of Candyman's kind of like a mythical creature. But I don't like.
You don't like the sci-fi mythical type stuff.
No, not sci-fi. I just don't like. I don't really care about ghost stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't care about like
Poltergeist and things like that.
I mean, I like Poltergeist.
Okay, so then you do like some of them.
No, it's more like there are movies like, like I just don't care about The Grudge. I don't care about Ring. I don't care about those kind of movies that use those kind of ghosts. I don't care about like,
okay, like. We get it.
Well, I'm just saying there's I don't know what kind of films that you would list those at, but I just yes, eventually the ones that I need to see, I will see, but typically I'm not dying or running to the theater to see them, or they're not high on my to-watch list.
So obviously we already know how you feel. You love it.
Yes, I think it's great.
Do you think it was the best horror film of the 90s?
I think hands down it is top 5, 100%.
Okay, I don't think so.
What
year did Death Proof come out?
Death Proof?
Yeah.
2007.
Darn. What year did Scream come out? That was 90s.
1996.
Right? Okay. I picked Scream.
I would say, like I said, this is definitely in the top 5. I definitely think it is full. Okay. When it comes to 90s horror, because to be honest, a lot of 90s horror I really don't like. I don't care.
Well, don't rate all yours now, because we might do that later.
No. I'm just saying when it comes to 90s horror, this is super high. If I were to make a list, I'm not going to make a list right now, but if I were to make a list, when I say this is super high on my list, I mean, I would have to go back and look at everything from 1990 to 1999 and see what movies I actually enjoyed out of that.
Yeah.
But I would say this is very high on my list.
Yeah. I get that. I will say, though, definitely comment in the comment section what your favorite horror film from the 90s is. And you never know. Maybe we will review one of them if we haven't already.
Yeah.
I think we've done too many 90 horrors.
We've done Candyman,
done a handful,
and Scream.
Yeah. But like always, do you have any parting shots?
Nope. That's
like
it.
I fucking love it. The end.
I would love a Candyman coat. I'm telling you right now. God damn. Yeah, I'd be fly as shit if I had a Candyman coat.
You'd be like flies on shit.
That's so mean.
You'd be really into it. What does that mean? Flies are really into shit. I didn't mean it in a mean way.
Okay.
It was just a play.
You'd be like flies on shit. Like you'd look like shit.
No, not at all. Not at all. I was just doing a play on words that you said. Anyways, but yeah, please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow if you don't already. Please leave us a rating as well. We definitely appreciate it. You can find all of our social medias as well as ways to listen and or watch at videovillaentertainment.com. That will have all the things you need there to easily access us and view any of our items or whatever's. Yeah. We appreciate you guys joining us today. I am Becca with Video Villa Podcast.
And I'm Logan.
And we'll see you guys next time.